Hello y'all, this is 1000 Week Reich, a mod for Hearts Mind Force set in a world where Germany won World War II. The mod aims to be, quote, gritty and realistic in that regard. There is quite a few countries with focus trees, but we're going to play as the United States, who never joined a war in Europe. At this point, it is the world's largest economy and a powerful torchbearer of democracy, becoming a challenger to Germany's New World Order. The United States in 1952. This is a backstory event. The war in Western Europe ended quickly as America looked on, but in 1941, Japan attacked, leading to years of bloody fighting, ultimately ending with an American victory. From the Pacific War. Despite the human toll, the USA emerged as a military and economic powerhouse. Listing off the national spirits we have from left to right: home of the free United Nations Council, American hegemony, economic miracle, the American industry, memories of the Pacific War, and last but not least, on the right, if we scroll over a little bit, is racial segregation, which comes with quite a few negative effects. Our country is part of a faction called the Toronto Accord, which has the USA and the United Kingdom in it, but also countries like Iceland, Belgium, and the Confederational Kingdom of the Netherlands and Indonesia. We got a Congress mechanic to keep track of, mainly to make sure we're in favor with both the Senate and House of Representatives. Looking at the very large military, we have 69 divisions in the Army, a large Navy with 11 fleets, and the USS United States aircraft carrier as the pride of the fleet, and the Air Force is gigantic too, with 81 air wings in total. Browsing through the Army commanders, we have plenty of generals and 2 field marshals in the form of Dwight Eisenhower and Omar Bradley. This mod has a little different tech tree, with armor, for example, being shifted around and changed. The same thing happened to the artillery tab, and new different kinds of technology were added for flying vehicles such as helicopters, and for aircraft they get broken up into light and heavy sections, the latter of which contains tactical and strategic bombers. We do have elections this year in 1952, but that can't happen yet, so let's start the focus tree with finish the hydrogen bomb. One thing I almost forgot about is to look at the naval commanders. We have tons of admirals, and that's not a bad thing. This mod has a United Nations in it. Fortunately, we are part of the Security Council, so we have a lot of say in the organization. US Congress mechanic: basically we need to aim to get support higher than 50% to do some stuff and get a nice modifier. Tales from Europe: in that continent, for the most part, human rights aren't exactly doing too well. The country has elections in November. The Republican and Democratic parties will be running against one another. Of note is Douglas MacArthur being a Republican candidate. A place named Roswell is stormed by UFO activists that find something that seems to be just a weather balloon. There is a lot of events here. Project Blue Book is keeping a record of aerial appearances of these so-called UFOs. Algeria has a civil war. The United States successfully tests the hydrogen bomb, and behind that, one of our patrol boats got hit by an airplane, killing 56 on board. In the military part of the focus tree, since we're done with that part with the hydrogen bomb, let's do the United States Armed Forces, the United States Army, then after that, start firepower doctrine. Southern tornado outbreak: Arkansas gets some infrastructure damage, and there is some shady dealings in the Reich across the sea. Senators criticize policy. Let's hit them back. We'll lose political power, but we may gain or lose support in the Senate. Douglas MacArthur holds a rally. He is a fierce supporter of interventionist policy and anti-isolationism. The United States military: this event explains that the armed forces have grown since the eve of World War II, and even after fighting, it is only partially demobilized. With that said, though, it could possibly be, with everything accounted for, as the strongest military in the world. Veterans around the USA suffer from the effects of the Pacific War. The worst of all is radiation poisoning. Many vets of the nation remain proud of their service, but every year there are fewer of them. We must choose a presidential candidate for the Democrats, so let's go with Harry Truman, and for the Republican Party, we'll have Douglas MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur, 5-star general and field marshal of the Philippine Army, is nominated. His slogan is, "I guess I like Doug." Meanwhile, Harry Truman hopes to have 4 more years. The U.S. Army: apparently the war with Japan wasn't too bad for them until they had to attack the home islands, and that was a brutal, slow war of attrition. Here's something normal: House Representatives criticize the policy. We'll hit them back. What isn't normal is UFOs being spotted over the Capitol. Looking at the Decisions tab, we can launch nukes to Germany if push comes to shove. Below that is the Federal Reserve, which amounts to keeping inflation low, and we can also start coups in some countries in Latin America. Occupied Japan no longer exists. They have become the Republic of Japan. Unidentified Nazi observers: so says some program on the radio that mentions things like National Socialist Neptunians and a interplanetary conspiracy being conducted against the United States. Space is the next frontier, and we can't let the Greater German Reich beat the USA too. At this event unlocks a number of space exploration decisions we need political power and support to use. To see how the covert operations decisions work, let's test the system out with Guatemala. We'll start with lay the groundworks for opposition, then we will have to wait for it to be done. Our former ally China invades Vietnam. With that conflict starting, we have unlocked new decisions relating to the war, such as criticizing the invasion and aiding Vietnam. We prepared to aid the Vietnamese, and we criticized the invasion on top of that. Anarchists take over Japan, and that country will be referred to from now on as the Japanese Anarchist Association. Using political power and the might of the United Nations, let's see if we can put an end to the Sino-Vietnamese War. 1952 presidential election, let's have MacArthur win. He beats Truman, and that focus is finished, and we also celebrate victory over Japan Day. With MacArthur elected, the Republicans return to the White House for the first time in 20 years. Inflation goes up in the country. We're going to have to reduce that down later. And behind that is another event. Disney's Peter Pan is produced by Disney. Coincidence? Probably. The presidential-elect receives his inauguration, and this will, I think, complete his focus as well. It does, and Douglas MacArthur is for sure now the President of the United States of America. Douglas MacArthur was historically what was said about him earlier, about him being a 5-star general and a field marshal of the Philippine Army. Other than that, though, he led the Allied occupation of Japan and was also the leader of the UN forces in the Korean War before being relieved by President Harry Truman in 1951. But in this timeline, one can't get rid of him so easily. Because of our choice and who the president is and who we picked out, we can access the focuses, no appeasement, promote the American dream below that, and a third focus shared with 2 other candidates, home of the brave. MacArthur's ministers, he put some new people into the cabinet, and the most notable one, at least the one I can recognize at the very least, is Richard Nixon on the left here. The man who has defined the last 30 years of history, Adolf Hitler, is dead. Not too long after the Führer dies, the end of fascist Italy arrives. The coup d'etat in Guatemala is successful, and at the very least that is a government friendly to the United States. We'll continue to aid Vietnam by sending them infantry equipment, and we also have a new decision category, the presidential agenda, to inspect. It has a decision to drum up war support for the cost of political power. France is reborn, and over in Eastern Europe, I have no clue what is happening. It's just complete chaos. Von Ribbentrop is declared the new Führer, but it is clear there is still a power struggle going on within the government. The focused German Civil War is completed. That means it has begun. What was once a united Reich now has many different factions vying for control in all-out war. Thanks to the German Civil War, there is an economic shock, and the line on the graph moves. Toronto Accord Council emergency meeting. Let's ask for immediate intervention. Our idea of intervention was shot down by the rest of the Accord. We'll just have to prepare, I guess. With the German Civil War focus completed, another part of the focus tree has opened up, which we must do before we can intervene. So let's first activate the reserves, then begin aerial reconnaissance, aid British armament, and expand the Toronto Accord in Europe. The British approaches with something called Plan R4. It has the word intervention in it, so sure, why not? We're going to give our full support to this plan that may involve invading Norway. It's going to be the Toronto Accord versus the Union State of Norway. The Marines with naval invasions will be the spearhead of our attack. The Norwegian capital of Oslo fell to us. Now we just got to make our way up north to Narvik. In Japan, the emperor is executed by firing squad. Norway is beaten, and we take all their land for now. We offered Sweden a spot in the Toronto Accord, and they accepted, cementing our position even more in Scandinavia. Norwegian liberation is formalized, and they will become our puppet. The transitional authority of Norway is made, and looking at the state of Germany, no clear victor seems to emerge out of the Civil War so far, which is good for us. Weapons are sent to Britain. The focus order I stated earlier was shifted around a little bit since we focused on trying to get Sweden in the Toronto Accord, which they did join, but the focus we have our eyes on now is begin aerial reconnaissance. We hold naval exercises that increase the world tension by 10. We have one more focus to do before we can intervene, and that is invite Portugal to the faction. Denmark joined our faction, so we have them, Norway, and Sweden as members of the Toronto Accord. Portugal declined our offer. That's their loss. A great crusade is completed, and we have a decision to make to go and attack the German Reich, which is in a civil war, and we shall do so, launching the Great Crusade, a direct intervention. We have a decision to invade through France. That would give us a direct land path into Germany. Let's contact Paris and see what they say. The German Civil War nations get a national spirit that will make them harder to attack, but we'll push through it anyway. And it's official. The intervention has begun. France approved of the plan, so we'll start sending some troops over to set up for the invasion into Germany. War support is surging, so that's good, but even better is successful naval invasions landing in the German Reich. Norway wants to join the war, and word reaches us about a German compromise where some Civil War factions have set aside their differences in an effort to stop the foreign invasion. The UN votes to back the war against Germany. I think the resolution passed, but I am uncertain. We're moving into the Low Countries. We have about nearly a year to win this intervention, or I suppose something bad could happen. On top of our attack, there is a new challenger approaching in the former People's Germany. Preparations to attack through France are complete, and it may not make much of a difference at this point, but at least it was an option. The Russian Republic demands the return of Sakhalin Island, and we can't really say no because we're too busy in Europe and we don't want to make an unnecessary enemy. The SS are trapped, the Reich is falling, and we're starting to border the emergency Wehrstadt, who will be the last to be defeated. The Swiss government is restored. They had appeared earlier to fight the Germans in the Civil War. We control almost all of Germany with the exception of Germania, which is held by People's Germany. With Minimal captured, let's hand it over to the Baltic Confederation, and besides that, let's transfer some land to People's Germany. The Czech government in exile returns to Prague. The Low Countries become part of the Benelux revolutionary movement, and we help create the German People's Republic, which is possibly a preferable alternative to its predecessor. Even though the Reich is gone, fascist governments are still around in Europe, and with the power of interventionism, they shall be gone soon thanks to some new decisions under the New Europe category. The Free Russian movement declared war on a country I don't know much about. While that's going on, we're liberating Spain. Our liberation ends with the creation of the Third Spanish Republic. With that over with, let's do the decisions that give us war goals on Croatia and Bulgaria. We occupy Croatia. It will be made into democratic Croatia and Bosnia. We could have gave land to Yugoslavia, but it wouldn't have really benefited us if we did that. The 10th anniversary of V-Day arrives. The national spirit memories of the Pacific War gets changed a bit as a result. Croatia and Bosnia won't be in the accord, unfortunately, but we have another matter to deal with, and that is the fascist tsardom of Bulgaria. There is no ports where we're naval invading in Bulgaria, so I have to build up a naval base and make up for the initial lack of one by sending in tons of units at once. The tsardom is transformed into the Republic of Bulgaria. We have one last thing we can do, and that is intervention in Japan, but we need the United Nations to approve of it first. I tried, the USA voted yes, but I don't think we got enough yeses to attack Japan. To end on a high note, we did ultimately contribute in tearing down Germany's New World Order and ascend to our own, with our faction now dominating both sides of the Atlantic. The video is going to end here. If you enjoyed the mod, make sure to check it out. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment. Have an awesome day. I'll see y'all later. Bye.